I'm Wayne County Treasurer Eric Sabri. We are living through unprecedented times. As a result, the Michigan Homeowner Assistance Fund was created. This fund, administered by the state of Michigan, is designed to help homeowners cope with pandemic-related hardships, such as delinquent property taxes. Residents may apply for up to $25,000 to help cover 2019, 2020, and 2021 tax years. Previous year's taxes must be paid in full or in a payment agreement with the Treasurer's office. Eligible homeowners must have a qualified financial hardship that occurred on or after January 21st, 2020. You must currently own and occupy your home as your primary residence and must have owned it since January 21st, 2020. To see if you qualify, please visit waynemetro.org, call 313-388-9799, or email taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Week That Was. My name is Saeed Khan, and I hope that the storms that went through Detroit yesterday weren't too destructive and damaging for you. I know that some people may have their power out, so hopefully you are safe wherever you are. Another very busy week in the news, and so let's go ahead and tackle this. We are joined again with a terrific group. We have community activist Barb Ingalls, we have attorney Joel Sklar, we have attorney Steve Fishman, we have community activist and political consultant Anthony Bryant, and of course we have Deadline Detroit co-founder Allan Lengel. And before we start with the news, we have a contribution on the streets of Detroit for those of you who want to keep your eyes open. Allan, I believe Steve Fishman has given us something.
All right, let me find that here. There it is. It's the billboard. Where is the billboard at, Steve?
The billboard is between 7 and 8 Mile. If you're going southbound on the Lodge, you can see it. I kind of wanted them to put it closer to Mumford, but these guys are suburban guys. They think if you're in south of 8 Mile, you're in the city, So.
All right. And how long is that going to be up for?
I had put it up there for a month. You might remember, Alan, I did it at the end of 40 years.
Right.
And people called me from the press saying, is this an advertisement? And I said, do you see anything in there that even says what I do for a living, let alone a phone number, let alone asking me? It means just what it says. I have a T-shirt that all of us at Mumford, we picked them up, born, raised, and educated in Detroit. It's been a long run. I never would have believed when I was a kid on Roselawn and 7 Mile that I'd have ever had the career I've had. And I owe all of it to have been born and raised here in the city, to have gone to Mumford, and to been around, all the folk all these years. And was just a mere thank you. I did get the idea 10 years ago. I was thinking I wanted to do something, and I saw Jalen had put a billboard up for the Fab Five, and I called him and I said, "You gave me a great idea." So I got to give Jalen Rose a little shout out because he's the one that gave me the idea of doing it.
All righty.
So this is on the southbound Lodge?
Southbound Lodge, yeah, to the left. If you're going down, it's on the east side of the street. And it's been, I think it's been up a couple of weeks, and it'll be a couple more. I've gotten a couple of calls, old Mumford people and other clients of mine that may have seen it and wanted to know, is it really true? You've been a lawyer for 50 years, I tell them, well, actually, I started as a lawyer when I was 3. Wow.
So.
And did you, by any chance, has this temporarily replaced one Jumana Kairou's billboard?
No.
Okay. Because if it's not there, then I don't know who to call for a lawyer.
Oh yeah, you do. Just keep driving down the street. The plaintiff's lawyer's got the entire expressway covered.
And on the buses.
And the buses and the TV. I go in the gym. All you see are plaintiff's lawyers, and they're in a different area than people like me. It's just not something that criminal lawyers do, although I do see every now and then occasionally people doing it. I think they're wasting their money, but I never was an advertiser. I figured if the streets talked, I'll be okay. And it seemed to work for all these years, Well,
thank you for showing your gratitude to Mumford, and actually you should send that to Eddie Murphy. I think.
Yeah, I think I told you guys once when the movie had just come out, my wife and I were in Atlantic City, and a young kid and his dad got up. I had a Mumford Phys Ed T-shirt on because we always played in our basketball leagues as Mumford Phys Ed. And the kid says, "Daddy, look, he went to Eddie Murphy's school." And I said, "Look, let me tell you something, kid. That guy didn't go to Mumford. I can tell you that for sure. The producer went to Mumford. That's where it came out. Bruckheimer was a Mumford grad. He's older than me. That's where it came from."
Well, I mean, the fact that it could have been mistaken identity and he could have said, "Look, it's Eddie Murphy himself."
Uh-huh.
I mean, there you go, Fish.
I have to say that never happened when I was playing basketball at public school league. It's pretty tough to tell me apart from everybody else, right?
And here is somebody who has seen the billboard.
All right. Yes. Thank you,
All
Stephen
right.
Adelson, for doing that. I hope you weren't distracted in your driving while you were looking at that and you stayed in your.
His wife drives him around. His wife was driving him, I guarantee you.
Okay, very good. Well, listen, a bit of breaking news before we went on, and that is that it looks like the Mar-a-Lago documents case trial docket has been set. Trump appointee Eileen Cannon has established that May the 20th of 2024 looks like the date when the trial will begin. This seems to be a compromise position between what Special Counsel Jack Smith had proffered and hoped for, which was December. And of course, on the other side, the Trump team, which said never, or at least indefinitely postpone. Is this a good date? How do you think this is going to play out? Fish.
Well, as I've told you guys before, federal court dates are never necessarily written in stone. Trial dates anywhere are never necessarily written in stone. I think the December date was probably unrealistic. I think Smith probably did it because he wanted to at least put some pressure on and say, "Hey, we're not going to sit around and let this guy do what he does every other lawsuit that he gets, which is never go to court if he can avoid it." May, I think, gives them enough time to do the things that they need to do. I could see her sticking with that. What we don't know is what's going to happen in D.C. when he brings the January 6th indictment. How many defendants are there going to be? Because that's a big part of trying a case. You know, if you've got 2 or 3 defendants or 1 defendant, that's one thing. We only have 2 down in the case there in front of Judge Cannon. You start with 10 or 12 defendants, which he may very well be doing in the D.C. case. And then it's tougher. You got to coordinate schedules and this and that and the other. But I think the May date makes sense. It seems to me it gives long enough time for them to get the clearances they need to look at certain things, and it gives them enough time to review the discovery. It doesn't mean they won't be whining and complaining and filing more motions, because that's the only thing this guy knows how to do. Because if he goes to court, he loses. And everywhere he goes, he loses, which is not surprising since he's guilty as hell. But that's the way it is.
I think what's interesting is that he's now going on the air and telling people, "Oh, you better be careful, you know, my people." And we have a video of this where he talks about basically threatening America, like if you mess with me, here's the consequences.
Is it something that concerns you of the people making sure that they don't go out of their right mind if something like that happens? Because I know what I'm thinking of could happen if that, for example, they do say Jack Smith says, "Okay, I'm going to put Donald Trump in jail."
I think it's a very dangerous thing to even talk about, because we do have a tremendously passionate group of voters. And I mean, maybe 100, 150. I've never seen anything like it. Much more passion than they had in 2020 and much more passion than they had in 2016. I think it would be very dangerous.
Joe, much more passion than they had in 2020, implying it could be even.
Well, I mean, he mentions 100 to 150, which I'm assuming he means million. But it seems as though there is a bit of a waning in the support. Obviously, not down to 100 people or 150 people. But how do you think this is going to play out? I mean, it seems like he, as usual, doth protest way too much. He did get the letter on Sunday that he was a target in the January 6th probe, which, from what I understand, getting a letter like that from the special counsel means you are going to be indicted. Can he really run out the clock?
It depends on the court. It's just going to depend on the judges if they allow him to. I hope he doesn't. I hope there's considered a priority of getting this tried. Certainly the documents case, I hope to God that May date holds. Jack Smith doesn't seem to be deterred. But all these dates can change. Who knows if Trump can run up the clock? If there's appellate procedures, God only knows what's going to happen.
Okay, Fish.
I don't think the issue when he behaves like that, I don't think the issue is him trying to run out the clock. I think he's your classic bully. He only knows two things: threats and bribes. That's the only way he knows how to exist. He's never done anything on the up and up his entire life. He's a son of a crook, and that's just the way criminals think. So what he's doing here, at least in my opinion, is his usual stuff. He's talking in generalities. He doesn't have 5 people who have told him they're going to go do anything. He just talks, and he hopes that he can inspire some people to do it. We've talked before on this show, though, that this is one of the instances, the fact that they prosecuted so many people for their behavior on January 6th, this is one of the only times that I can think of where general deterrence actually seems to have worked. Every time he talks like this, he gets a few people out there, but they're old people standing on 12 Mile, waving Trump flags. They're not going and doing the kinds of things that we saw on January the 6th. And I just think that he only knows, like all sociopaths and all criminals, he only knows 2 things: bullying and bribing. And right now, a statement like he just made there, he really thinks somehow that's going to affect the Jack Smith's decision. If he thinks that, he's even, what was the immortal line in Chinatown? If he believes that, he's even dumber than he thinks I think he is.
And he also is experiencing abject fear. You don't see, I think underlying all this, there's a lot of fear in Trump right now. There's a lot of fronts that he has to face. They're serious. They're not bullshit. They're substantial. I think there's a lot of fear. And the more fear, the more calls for people save me. But I think there's that third element.
Yeah, I don't think there's enough. I don't think there's enough Imodium that's going to help out his lower colon right now until May.
His gut is he is in pain.
Yeah. Anthony and Barb, you still see an awful lot of open support, at least vocally, from Republican leadership. Speaker of the House Kevin, any way the wind blows McCarthy, seems to. There's one for you, Barb, from Bohemian Rhapsody. The whole idea of really doubling and tripling down. Saying that this is a political act. I mean, even somebody who arguably stands the most to gain from Trump's demise politically, Ron DeSantis seems to have his back, at least verbally. Is this good strategy for them?
You want to go, Anthony?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a good strategy. I mean, it really depends on what your intended outcome is, because if their intended outcome is to fundraise, Ron DeSantis super PAC raised like $100 million, and they're able to, continuously fundraise off of like, Democrats are persecuting us and trying to lock us up, and our, supreme emperor, right? And like, it's not just the leadership that loves him so much. I was driving down to Miami yesterday, and I saw this huge Trump sign right outside of Orlando that was like him in front of this blue American flag. And I don't know, it just seems like there is that craziness that still exists, or maybe like they just have the funds to continue to, project with the media this image of him that they want to make it seem like he's still like everybody's favorite. And Ron DeSantis, that guy, I don't know how you're not able to get ahead of this guy at all when he's facing a federal indictment. Like, are you really that bad of a candidate that like you can be the governor of a whole state?
He really is.
People still don't want you? Like,
well, and I mean, it seems as though he's also taking a far, far more extreme position when it comes to social engineering in Florida. And Allan, I think we've got a clip about this.
Okay, let's see here.
Yesterday, the Florida Board of Education approved new standards for Black history instruction that require lessons for middle schoolers to include, quote, how slaves develop skills, which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit. The old racist trope from the 1850s that slavery benefited the enslaved seems to have been resurrected in Florida, and middle schoolers in that state may be required to learn it. As part of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' efforts to whitewash Black history, high schoolers in the state's public school system will now be taught that race massacres, like the racial terror in Ocoee in 1920, the largest incidents of voting day violence in American history, that those massacres included acts of violence perpetrated against and by African Americans.
You know, when I see that, and I saw it yesterday, I was so outraged by it. And I thought, okay, my parents are Holocaust survivors, And I think I owe the Nazis an apology. I should be thanking them for giving my parents these survivor skills that they were able to use through the rest of their lives. So thank you, Nazis. And thank you, slave owners, for really being so generous and educated. I mean, it's the most disgusting thing that I've seen in a long time. And it just enrages me to see how backward it's like the KKK has taken over the government down there, and they are going to rewrite history. It's insane.
What is wrong with the people of Florida? This is what I want to know, man. What is wrong with these people?
It's the heat.
Yeah.
They voted them in. They're keeping them in. I don't get it.
It's not just that, Barb. They found a 19-foot Burmese python with 111 eggs in it. So I don't know. I think you got to pick your battles. As far as what's the biggest threat down there?
Python, sorry.
We also have the cocaine sharks now. So you have all the coke that fell off the J.P. Morgan Chase boat. The sharks are eating it.
Well, they already had the movie Cocaine Bear, Anthony. So I mean, Cocaine Sharknado, I think, is next.
Send the orcas down there.
Yeah, but what's the tipping point then? I mean, as you said, Barb. I mean, if you're asking the very real question, what's wrong with Floridians? There clearly seems to be a presumption by state legislators that they're not going to not only be held accountable for this, but somehow or the other, this is what their constituents will accept and even want.
Kyle Rittenhouse was in Michigan this week. I don't know if you guys saw this. They had a big Trump rally.
Why don't you remind us, Barb? Why don't you remind us, Barb, who Kyle Rittenhouse is?
Kyle Rittenhouse was, I believe, at 16 at the time this happened. His mother drove him across state lines with an AR-15, and he shot 2 people in cold blood, but got off. So he's running around. He's like he's a darling of the right. But he had this big. So they have this big rally in Ionia. I think 200 people showed up, maybe, and half of them were vendors, gun vendors, in the most part. And so I think one of the problems that we have, and we talk about this every week I've been on, the media cannot get enough of Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis and their shenanigans, and it makes it seem bigger than it is. Now, Florida is Florida. And those people, I don't get it. Texas is Texas and whatever. But I think the rest of the country is kind of going, how can I stand behind this kid? And how can I stand behind this big orange lying sack of shit? I mean, I really, and I hope I'm right, but I think that people are backing away from the crazy. And also, things are going pretty well in this country in terms of the infrastructure, all these things, the roads are being fixed all over the place, people being hired. It's kind of hard to hang on to that fury when
there's like a lot of Trump fatigue, I think, going on. I think there's a lot of fatigue. It's exhausting.
Joel, there is, I'm sorry, Allan. Joel, there is fatigue, but is there a push to fill in the space, to move Trump out of the news cycle, to actually highlight some of what is going right?
Oh God!
Because I'm not hearing it.
Yeah, I don't know who can fill that void or create that space. Quite frankly, there's no force of personality in that Republican Party.
I'm talking about even the Democrats. I mean, sort of heralding the message. Yes, Steve.
Let's ask Barbara and Anthony. They're in the politics stuff. What if this guy Youngkin declared? You think he could make a dent in Trump's support or no?
Glenn Youngkin, the governor of Virginia.
Yeah.
America runs on Youngkin. That guy.
No, but I mean, he's got a lot of money. He's fancy. He positions himself as a more reasonable Republican. I mean, do you think he could make a dent in Trump's support?
I don't think so. I think he's on his way out of there anyway. The Virginia governor's race tends to go the opposite of who is in office. And I think really he only won that because Terry McAuliffe was just such a terrible candidate who was
he really was.
Yeah. you know, they were tired of the slimy like corporate Democrats, and they were like, well, let's try a slimy corporate Republican, and now look what you got. You got people
How'd that work out for them?
Who are voting against critical race theory, and you ask them what that is, they're like, I don't know, but I know it's bad. Like, and that's why we have the legislation that we have in Florida, because people go off these buzzwords and they have no idea, like, any kind of context around the things that these Republicans are saying about critical race theory and things like that. Like, you ask anybody who's opposed to it what it is, they cannot tell you. Promise you.
I think the road to that nomination is going to be through Trump, and I think nobody. Chris Christie is trying to punch away, and I don't know how. And so far, you know, nobody. Christie's the only one who's really head on taking him on, and he's not making a big dent right now. I think a guy like Youngkin comes in, he's just too moderate. It's like Asa Hutchinson. They're just too, you know, soft. It's like Jeb Bush. Like in 2016, Trump just ran over all these guys because they didn't know how to deal with the steamroller. And when they got in the way, they got flattened. Yeah, and exactly. And he was the best Bush of any of the candidates. And he got annihilated because nobody knows how to deal with Trump. The only one who's trying is Chris Christie, and you know, so far he's not.
Maybe this
getting
needs
a lot
to
of
happen.
traction.
Maybe this needs to happen to put the final nail in the Republican coffin. He needs to go down so badly. He needs to be the one that runs, and that's it, and just get crushed.
Well, what about the idea of, getting back to a Trump appointee judge setting a trial date, which is clearly not something that is palatable to Trump. Do you think he'll turn on her?
Not for a while. I don't think he will.
Well, wait, I can look. This guy has a history. Every time he's in front of a judge, the guy's either a Latino, he's a Mexican gangster, or he's a Jewish this or whatever. Yeah, he'll turn on her. He'll say whatever he feels like saying. And sometimes guys like that forget, and it's because he's never been in the hot seat before. You keep on talking, son, because that's the person who's going to be sentencing your butt when you get convicted. So you want to call all kinds of names? Go right ahead.
Well, he has a history of calling women nasty, but then so does Vanity Six. But anyways,
because Cannon's been kind to him previously. I don't think he's going to jump on her yet. I think she'll have to make a few more.
Bad turn of phrase, Joel. Bad turn of phrase, because as you know, the judge in New York has dismissed Trump's efforts to go ahead and have a retrial in the case there. In fact, even saying that while not legal rape, it certainly falls into what most people's understanding of rape is. So there's something going on. Well, here closer to home.
Real quick, I think there's no question. As soon as Judge Cannon makes a ruling that is not in his favor, he'll start trashing her. He'll start going that ingrate. I made her career. I gave her this. There'll
be more than this one. There'll have to be a series. There'll be another adverse decision. It's going to take more than this trial date that is tentative, quite frankly. So it's going to take more than that.
Like motion to dismiss the case altogether on day one.
Right. But, there'll be more reasons to jump on, or not yet.
He'll dox her, I think, on May 21st. Everyone will have her address. I'm sure.
I'm laughing. It's not funny. It's true.
Yeah.
True.
Well, I mean, closer to home, you've got, of course, Attorney General Dana Nessel announcing federal felony charges against the list of 2020 Republican false electors on charges of forgery, conspiracy to commit forgery, etc. It's interesting to see that on some other radio stations, AM around the state, the reflexive defense of and by hosts to say, oh, this is not fake electors. This is a perfectly acceptable alternate list, which is constructed. This happens every election. What's going on here?
Fish.
Yeah, Fish.
What I think's going on here is the people who are saying those things on the radio are full of shit. That's number one. Okay. Number two, what's going on, and I'm not the biggest fan of Dana in the county of Wayne, But I think what's going on is what she said, and she had, I don't know if you guys saw it, she had about an 8 or 9 minute, I couldn't tell if it was a press conference or just a talk. It basically looked like a talk. And I thought she explained it pretty well. I mean, there's no doubt that they forged things. There's no doubt that they were conspiring to overthrow the election. I mean, the things that they're charged with, there's not any doubt in my mind that they did it. And I thought that an article I read somewhere, I thought was good in that she confined everything to the state of Michigan. Most of the people that we read about, we've never heard their names other than maybe Miss Sean Maddock. The rest of them, there's one guy who's 80. They were older than Lengel and I, so they're older. But I think that the evidence is there, and I'm hopeful, as what happened on with the January 6th defendants that they charged. You have to charge people like this so that people can get it in their heads that, look, you want to pull this shit, great, but you might go to jail for it. And most of these people, how many times have I said it? They're weenies. They're not. Trump's he's a coward. They're weenies. It's easy for them to say, oh yeah, blah 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 blah. Wait until the guy's standing there with the keys. Once the jury says guilty and the judge is getting ready to give him 3 to 5, they're not going to be so happy. So personally, I think she did the right thing, and I think it gets people's attention. They can call it political all they want, but she's charged Democrats with things having to do with election fraud. So, if they thought they could do it and get away with it, now they can't. Hopefully
maybe one reason why we're not seeing, the vision of violence that Trump wants to see, because the January 6 rioters were prosecuted and they were placed in jail. Is that one reason why people are not in the streets, with their AR-16s and wherever they are, so upset with what's happened with Trump? Deterrence is part of the purpose of a charge and a conviction and a sentence. And I'm glad that's happening. But that could be a reason why Trump's calls for arms are so blunted.
Well, I
think it's, I was going to say, the laws and the books. I mean, somebody who's a murderer isn't going to be deterred. I mean, if they're a true-blooded killer or whatever, they're not going to be deterred by the law. But you saw January 6th. I mean, there were school teachers and there were cops and there were people where the laws really make a difference, where people, they are a deterrent. And I think people are seeing the prosecution, and Trump's not going to get that kind of support again out there, where people are just going to start rioting because they know they're going to go, away to prison. And I think, as Steve was saying, in this case, people are downplaying the fact that we had a president who was trying to overturn an election illegally, who was trying to really pull off a coup in this country that we've never seen before. And it's serious shit. And it needs to be prosecuted. And some people are like, let's move on, we're tired of it. But no, that needs to never happen again.
There's one other thing. I think I've mentioned it on this show before. The police, wherever it is going to be, whether it was in the city of Detroit, whether it's in Michigan, whether it's in DC, they saw what happened to their fellow officers. There's a big brotherhood of police officers, obviously. It's always been that way. It'll always be that way. Yeah. And they saw what happened when they didn't have enough officers and the things that happened to some of those guys. And I think that now police departments are ready for this crap. And you're going to start now. You're going to come to, it's like when they talk about they're going to fight the government. Really, when the United States Marines show up, I don't think they're going to do very well. It's the same thing here. You're going to come in the city of Detroit and you're going to start marching around like that. Your butt is going to jail, and it's going quick. And nobody is going to be overrunning police now because the cops are ready for it. And that's another thing that January the 6th has helped us with, but it didn't happen then. You saw what happened to the police officers then.
Even the cops that are on the side of the Trump people. And there are quite a few of those guys, but they're not going to stand for that. I mean, as a person that's been out there before, and I've seen people get the shit kicked out of them for stupider reasons than this, just because they can. And I think that these people maybe figured out that it's not going to go so well, and it's going to make it harder on everybody else to go out and have a peaceful protest, because we all saw it with the George Floyd protests in Detroit. They were terrible to people that were just marching Detroit trying to stop police brutality. It was horrible what they did, but that's how it is.
When Trump was arraigned in New York, he expected a riot. Right. He was predicting people are going to go crazy. Marjorie Taylor Greene went there and was screamed at and was sworn at. And she was finally like, I'm getting out of here. These New Yorkers are crazy. Nothing
Jews and black
happened.
people and Puerto Ricans. That's what she was thinking.
Yeah, nothing happened there. The cops were out in full force. There was nothing that happened there. And I think we're going to see Trump's going to be awfully disappointed each time that he gets indicted and nothing happens.
Well, I mean, I guess in a little bit of poetic justice, one of the Central Park Five, for which Trump had taken out a full-page ad in the New York newspapers calling for their death penalty and never apologized even after they were fully exonerated, Yusuf Salaam was elected in a landslide to the New York City Council. So a little bit of justice served there. But according to the New York Times, it seems as though Trump and his acolytes and minions are seeking to help him, if he wins in 2024, consolidate more presidential power, including over the independence of agencies within Washington. A complete abdication, one might think, of the legislative branch and even the judicial branch if they're involved. I don't know if any of you read the article, but it was pretty sinister.
Frightening. I think what Trump would like, he'd like to make the FBI a cabinet position that answers to him. I think he wants to be able to have the attorney general report to him as they do, but he wants to have control over that. He wants to make decisions. And you talk about weaponization. It's so funny. That's his whole thing. They're weaponizing the Justice Department. He really wants to weaponize the Justice Department in a way that who knows who he'll go after, but he'll definitely use that as a weapon.
I thought that the article itself was terrific. I agree with you. And it was a little bit scary. One would hope that there are enough people that read it. Remember, it's in the New York Times. It's not in the New York Post. It's not on Fox News. But I think anybody that read that has any conception of being afraid. I mean, remember, all these people thought the government had no business telling them to be vaccinated, for God's sake. But they think that the president of the United States should have the ability to direct his attorney general to go do something to you. That's something that one would hope that they're paying attention to. But, you always have to wonder, because it's an article in the New York Times, and most people who are reading the New York Times don't have to be convinced that it'd be a disaster of the highest order for this guy to get back in office.
Yeah.
I mean, that goes back to earlier when we were talking about these people not understanding the kind of things they repeat, because they have all these stop big government. I saw a bumper sticker yesterday that said it was like defund the police, but that was crossed out and said defund big government. It's like, you don't even know what you're saying, because you'll probably go back and vote for this guy who's a tyrant who is going to impose his will on every facet of your life, what you can and can't even say in public. Like, come on now.
What was the license plate that corresponded to that bumper sticker, Anthony?
Georgia.
Okay.
I mean, it's so funny because Trump is trying to tell his people we're on the verge of it's fascism, communism, and all that stuff. He has given me insights. I've grown up. My parents are Holocaust survivors. I grew up my whole life wondering, how was it that Hitler rose to power, stayed in power, and did all these horrible things, and people just followed and supported him? And I see, at least pre-World War II, I see the fascism that is going on, and people are blindly. You watch these rallies, and you're looking at the people and going, who are you, and why are you there, and why are you smiling and giggling at everything Trump says? And I get there's something about the charisma in any fascist country we've seen, where the leaders are so charismatic and so strong and provide security for people, a feeling of security, that they follow blindly.
He ripped the lid of civility completely off.
Yes.
Well, if he gets reelected, welcome to fascism. Our Fuhrer will be installed.
My parallel is not as intense as Hitler, but I was.
No. I'm not saying I'm not talking genocide. I'm talking absolution of power. You know what I'm saying?
To Allan's point, I mean, like, you're just wondering how that kind of rise to power can happen. I wonder the same thing about honestly, George Bush.
Yeah, that's
true. How did my parents' generation elect that twice, and now look what we're in?
Right.
Well, I mean, look at Spain. I mean, we're not even 50 years on from the death of Franco, and they just elected a far-right political party over there. And I remember coming to the United States at the age of 8, and I was mystified by the very idea that anybody would give any money to a preacher on TV. But, you know, shows how stupid I was at 8. Not that I gave any money myself, but I mean, you know, you had.
It's all of those the old guys, our parents, your parents, my parents, they're all gone. And they remember the Depression. They remember being deprived of things and having to work, and then World War II. And they learned something there. I mean, those guys that came back, all of my friends' fathers came back pretty fucked up, angry, and they couldn't talk about it. And what they saw was so horrible. And if you said anything made a joke about Nazis in my neighborhood, one of those old guys would just knock the shit out of you. They, you know, I mean, it was no joke to them. It was not funny. It was a real thing that never went away. And they're gone. You know, there's so few, like Tony Bennett, who helped, liberate camps when he was in World War II, died today. I mean, that's another one, 96. There are so few of them left. And so this can all creep back. In Spain, there's no one left that remembers.
Right. History repeats itself. I mean, it's amazing to me that we've learned nothing, that this is how primitive we fucking are. We've learned nothing from our recent past.
Right.
And we're walking right back to fight fights. And this isn't civil rights. It's internet. It's insane to me, but you're absolutely correct, man. There's no memory. And so we're bound to repeat the historic failures we've had before. It's awful.
I mean, it's like the Florida thing passing about the slavery. It's like we're reaching a level of insanity. It's insanity to say, "Oh, slavery. Hey, let's not forget the good side of slavery."
Yeah, it's crazy. It's bizarro world.
This isn't even Monty Python of, you know, always look for the brighter side of life. I mean, it's mystifying. I mean, in some of these, and I mean, as an educator, I mean, I just wonder where the challenges are going to be. I mean, especially now with ChatGPT and how that can go ahead and be manipulated, and hear it being taught in the curricula that you're describing. Well, it seems as though Mar-a-Lago is not just the site for a bunch of classified documents. Apparently, Trump is quite the hoarder in chief. Looks like he has several items of historical and cultural significance to other countries. The state of Israel, for example, is trying to recover national treasure items that are in Mar-a-Lago.
Probably in the bathrooms.
Well, I mean, I don't know if this was his, he felt that this was his finder's fee or commission for the Abraham Accords or whatnot. But anyone want to lay bets on what are the prospects that Israel's going to get these things back?
I think Israel will do a commando raid if they have to.
Send them a flag, they'll get it back.
There's no bottom to this guy. There's no bottom. It's terrible.
What was it? I think next year is the 50th anniversary of Entebbe, isn't it, Allan? So I mean, this would be a great reenactment, I suppose, if they wanted to go ahead and do that. But I mean, I think this idea that there is no bottom is quite telling. On another part of or side of the world, which some people consider to be flat, when we're talking about the issue of ignorance, a U.S. soldier who apparently had been punished a few times for assault charges and other things in South Korea gets to the airport at Seoul Incheon to fly back to the United States to face more disciplinary charges. Instead, somehow he tells the people at the gate, "I don't have my passport," and then leaves and gets on a tour bus up to the demilitarized zone, and then crosses over and defects to North Korea. He has now been listed as absent without leave because shockingly, apparently he didn't have permission to do this from the U.S. military. And apparently North Korea is not answering any phone calls right now from Washington. Bizarro world, yes, as Joel said, we are in, but where's this one going?
Maybe him and Kim Jong-un are hooping or something, you know?
Hey, Anthony, you know what? Don't
Rodman's
knock
over
it.
there.
Don't knock it. Rodman might go and bring him back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're going to
well,
have to spend tax money to work on this nitwit, too.
Yeah.
I think we may have to send Dennis Rodman to get him out of there.
They're going to make this guy a national treasure, and he's going to have to just go on TV and tell people all these things that Kim says about the United States. Like, this is all true, you know? Like, you have the best soccer team in the world right here.
So how about this as a possible scenario? Given how chummy Trump is with dear leader Kim Jong-un, the idea that he picks up the phone and contacts Kim Jong-un, has another one of those perfect phone calls, and somehow the other does what Biden and the Pentagon and the State Department are unable to do, which is bring him back on Trump Force One. I can see those optics being something that, particularly with his base, would show him being, even out of office, more of a statesman than Biden.
Wait, do we want this guy back?
Right. It's like, bye-bye.
Keep him.
Yeah, I think the first thing you have to say is, look who you're bringing.
Right.
I mean, it's not like you're bringing a decorated soldier who somehow got captured in the middle of a raid or something like that. You're bringing back a knucklehead. I just can't see that one. I don't know.
I'd say a swap.
Basketball player.
They need a swap. Trump for him.
Guilty or innocent, sane or insane, Stallone and Chuck Norris have made careers of going and rescuing and bringing back Americans. So why?
Yesterday, that's a great movie. I'm sorry, it was a great movie. Go ahead, please.
No. I mean, I think that pretty much says it all, Joel.
That's where my cinematic splendor comes from.
You know, Oppenheimer came out, but you decided you needed to see Rambo again.
Yeah, right.
And what does it say that the two big blockbuster movies, Oppenheimer and Barbie, both are things that take place in the 50s? Barbie was created in 1959. The Red Scare, which was vilifying Oppenheimer, also in the 1950s. Maybe this is what people mean by making America great again. Don't know. Another thing close to home, which I think is very disconcerting. Fish, you started off by talking about Mumford. It seems as though the number of college students, especially low-income students and African-American students in Michigan, the numbers are plummeting over the last decade. And it seems as though Michigan's community colleges, in fact, are ranked around 48 in the nation when it comes to graduation rates and some other metrics. I mean, thank God for Mississippi, because there's always a bottom below us. But it seems as though there's a crisis going on here with education. Anthony, I see you shaking your head.
You know, it's really disappointing as someone who is, born and raised in Detroit, that, has had to leave the city multiple times, multiple years to have opportunity. Like, I can see that in these younger kids who haven't even gone to college yet, or like, a lot of the kids in my neighborhood who might not necessarily like see that as a pathway. And Michigan has this new agenda of trying to attract young talent to the state. How about trying to retain the young talent that you have? How about trying to make college more accessible for these kids? Why do I have to have a Detroit promise just to go to U of M? Like, why is people from all over the world more of a priority to come in than me? Because they're going to pay for it. And you have to give me a scholarship, which is coming out of my tax money anyway, right? And I don't know. I have too much I could say about the way the state's handling things, but Michigan is just really not an attractive place for young, single people, educated or not. Like, there's not really that much to do but get high, get drunk, and eat. Like, and you can do that anywhere.
I don't know. I mean, I think that should be on a billboard right next to Fish. I think that and put it out there on the Ohio Turnpike.
Right.
I think we're gonna have people coming in left, right, and center.
Michigan,
Fish.
Get high, eat, get drunk.
I agree 100% with what Anthony's saying, and it all started, in my view at least, when Engler decided to defund the universities. I've said on this show before, the maximum tuition when I was at college at U of M in the late 60s, the highest it ever was $280 a semester. A semester, not a class hour, a semester. And everything else was pretty much the same. I went to Wayne Law School. I paid $900 a year for 3 years, from 1970 to 73. What changed? What changed was the state defunded the universities, and all of a sudden, the universities got to start charging. And just as Anthony said, who do you think they want to have there? Somebody from Detroit Mumford who cannot afford to pay the kind of price they want, or some kid that comes from a family in Connecticut who can easily pay the outstate tuition. And I go and speak at the schools, and it's difficult to try to encourage people to go to college, and because you have to explain to them, you have to tell them that this is something that's going to cost a lot of dough. So if you're in the 5th or 6th grade, you have a desire to go to college, you better start working your behind off so you can qualify for a scholarship when you get into high school and things of that nature. Back to what I said, we were born, raised, and educated in Detroit. From our high school senior class in 1966, we probably had 40 or 50 kids that went to Michigan, for God's sake. A lot of kids went to college, but it was affordable. You could work in the summer. I've worked in the summer and could pay my tuition and pay my housing. It was $53 a month on Church and Willard, right in the middle of the campus. It just once you make things unaffordable, then we have all the other things that Anthony and all of us know exactly what it stems from. Once kids lose hope that they can't do any better, then obviously the streets start to look attractive and all that other stuff.
Right.
Fish, have you seen the Michigan campus now and how bougified it is? I mean,
are you kidding me? Our daughter went to college there for 4 years, graduated in 19. She just completed her 2nd year of law school. And I'll tell a real quick story. We came up to take her out to dinner, my wife and I and my son, who's older. We went to a restaurant. We never had any nice restaurants when we were there. I looked around and I told the kids, I said, I want you to look around here. All these parents, I can't remember, it was Parents Weekend, one of those crazy things. And this was an expensive restaurant. It was like you would go to in Birmingham. And it was packed with people, and every family there, everyone, were the parents with the kids. And I told them, I said, look at this. None of our parents ever went to a restaurant like that on their own, let alone taking the kids there on a Sunday. And yes, that's exactly the places that they live, $1,000, $1,500 a month to pay for students to live. I mean, it's insane. It really is.
$280 is the monthly coffee budget there now, Barb.
Exactly.
You can't get young people to go to college. You can't get them to community college. You can't get them into apprenticeship programs that pay you while you're learning. We're having a crisis in this state, and I think one of the problems is you can't get around. If you haven't got a car, you can't get there. Right. And that's, I think, the number one thing. And that's one of the things, like I live here in Royal Oak, and people just scream and yell at the thought of paying for transit that they might not personally get on. I grew up taking buses. I take the fast bus down when I want to go to a event or something. But there is possible jobs everywhere. They just built a brand new, huge training facility right off the lodge for carpenters and plumbers. They need these things desperately. But if you can't get there, you're not going to be able to do it. And I think that's one of the problems that we have, is that we can fix the roads all we want, but unless we put trains and buses on them, and ones that you can count on, that are clean, that show up when you want them to, and take you home when you need to go, we're going to have this problem. And it's something that really, I mean, how long would it take to put up 5 new bus lanes? And then you have to wait. I mean, you have to let these things come to fruition. You can't just put them out and see it. But I don't know who's gonna come and fix my plumbing if something goes wrong. You know what I mean? It's like everything, let alone build these buildings that they're building.
I mean, to your point, Barb,
you can't get people like in Macomb to support public transportation, all that kind of stuff, because they've never had good public transportation. People are standing out in the middle of winter an hour waiting for a bus. Who's going to put up with that in Detroit, which is such a car culture? And we have such poor transportation. I mean, if you take a bus up and down Woodward, it's not bad. But other than that, it is so hard to get from point A to point C.
Yeah.
It's just, and we've got the Q line, which is just, was supposed to, originally the talk was getting it out to Pontiac, but I live right at one of the Q line stops, and it takes 15, 20 minutes to go about 2.5 miles. I mean, you imagine if you were going out to Pontiac, you'd have to pack a lunch and, and take a pillow and get a book and whatever. I mean, the transportation system sucks here in this area, and it would help. Young people want to use public transportation. Everybody. I lived in D.C. for 14 years.
You can listen to music on the bus. Yeah. You can do your homework on the bus.
You have to deal with traffic and stuff. I mean, D.C. had amazing public transportation. D.C. I lived in Portland, Oregon. They had great buses. They have a light rail system there. Yeah, it's just.
Look, I mean, I was just in the UK a few weeks ago, and I mean, I only take public transportation or walk. I don't rent a car or anything like that. And the ease, like you said, Barb, I mean, being on a train and getting reading done. It was a literature festival, so I had a lot of reading to get done. The other thing is you're on a bus in the morning, like say 7:30, and all of a sudden, like a circus clown car, all these kids get on board because the kids use the bus service as their school bus. It's free for them to use, and it is just absolutely efficient. So part of that is definitely cultural, and I think you can't inculcate it unless you start it. It seems like that would be a really thing. And I'll tell you, if you then got rid of the school bus system and you had the kids on there, people would support it. And I think that they would make sure that it was also far more efficient and punctual and frequent.
Yeah. Put Wi-Fi on it, put plugs on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Wi-Fi is all over these things now. So anyways, Allan, I think we've got an ad, and then we'll go into our final phase.
I'm Wayne County Treasurer Eric Sabri. We are living through unprecedented times. As a result, the Michigan Homeowner Assistance Fund was created. This fund, administered by the state of Michigan, is designed to help homeowners cope with pandemic-related hardships, such as delinquent property taxes. Residents may apply for up to $25,000 to help cover 2019, 2020, and 2021 tax years. Previous year's taxes must be paid in full or in a payment agreement with the Treasurer's office. Eligible homeowners must have a qualified financial hardship that occurred on or after January 21st, 2020. You must currently own and occupy your home as your primary residence and must have owned it since January 21st, 2020. To see if you qualify, please visit waynemetro.org, call 313-388-9799, or email textinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
All right, and we have a 6-second yuck.
Again, I'd like to thank Crystal Meth Santa Claus for being here.
Okay, and here we go.
Downtown Detroit, Robert Wells, Schmuck of the Week.
If you haven't watched Between Two Ferns, strongly recommend it. Zach Galifianakis, and of course, David Letterman there as Crystal Meth Santa Claus.
That's right.
All right, Anthony, who's your Schmuck of the Week?
I got to give it to Ron DeSantis. I've made my claim for why he should be earlier, but just the fact that you can't even have your own party's support over somebody facing federal indictment who's disgraced is a disgrace to yourself, and you should just hang it up, man.
There you go. All right, Barb.
Mine is, I get his name right, is Ted Sarandos, who is the CEO of Netflix, and as he proudly said this week, he's the son of a union member. His father was an electrician. It's too bad he didn't take an electrical cord and beat the hell out of him before he left the house. It's going to be, like I've said this every week, this is going to be a crazy summer as we go on and more people go on strike. But really, a guy that makes, $2 million a year plus stock and all these other things, chiding union members for wanting, a little piece of the pie, he can go fuck himself, and he's a schmuck.
Well, isn't it, Barb, that CEO of Disney, Bob Iger, makes more in an hour than most writers in Hollywood do in a year?
Yep.
Wow. I think it's like 70,000 compared to 69.5. Okay, Steve.
I thought it was real quick. I thought it was interesting. Fran Drescher is talking about the shows now on all the streaming shows that they're only like 3 seasons because they're only doing it as long as they can keep getting subscriptions. And once they figure they've sort of tapped out on that, they stop. I just finished Jack Ryan, the 4th season. There were only 6 episodes. That was it. So, anyways.
I forget the actress, but someone was saying that she gets a check of 81 cents for her residuals.
Mandy Moore.
There you go.
Mandy Moore on This Is Us. Yep.
Yeah, 81 cents. So that doesn't add to the Ann Arbor coffee budget very well. So, anyways, Fish.
Mine, I'm getting away from politics. My schmuck of the week is one Daniel Snyder, the former owner of the Washington Commanders, formerly known as the Washington Redskins. Daniel Snyder, in addition to having been accused over the years of multiple instances of sexual harassment, finally, he was also found to have stolen money actually from the other owners, and he had to pay $60 million out of the humongous price he got for the ball club because he had been hiding money that was supposed to go into the fund that everybody gets. And he also, of course, had to pay off, it was a male and a female, by the way, having to do with sexual harassment. He's been in the news for years with this, but the culmination of it all on the front page of the Washington Post and the $60 million figure easily qualified him for my schmuck of the week.
Amen.
Okay, Joel.
One of the most unpopular sports owners in any sport.
Yeah, in the history of sport. After Donald Sterling. Out there in San Diego.
Plenty to go around. The other, my thing is going to be collective. As I understand it, there is a god-awful heat issue. It's been the hottest June on record, the hottest July. I think Europe is baking. People are dying everywhere. Mine is going to be all those fucking climate change deniers. Said, hey, the climate's nothing. It's not impacting shit. Fuck you. It really bothers me. It angers me. I'm not even hearing the discussion of the acceptance of, oh my God, we're in a crisis. If we don't, we should have done something 30 years ago, 40 years ago. We better do something now. It drives me insane. So all of you climate deniers out there who forever years been saying there's been no impact, to hell with you.
No,
these generations got to deal with it.
Yeah,
if air quality outside is sucking now, what it's going to be, it's just awful. So
not just the air quality, but I don't know if y'all saw that Arizona, not just Europe either, is facing like record high heat, and it's become uninhabitable without air conditioning.
Right.
Based on like the average heat that it'll be out there. If you don't have air conditioning, you cannot live there. Like that's just crazy.
It just drives me to hell with them.
That's my March, right?
Mucks of the week.
Somebody on TV was talking to an insurance agent who was a Republican, a conservative Republican, and they asked him, do you think this climate change is real? And he says, are you kidding me? He says, the payouts that we've been doing in the last many, many years because of climate change? He says, of course it's real.
Conservative sage Ben Shapiro was interviewed, and he said, well, actually, all you need is more air conditioning, which, of course, what air conditioning does is it simply redirects hot air into the atmosphere, making things even hotter, which then leads to, of course, more air conditioning. But he says if you have a problem with with the heat, move to a developed country.
Like Arizona.
Great.
It's not helpful advice.
His great advice on that. Allan, your schmuck.
I'm gonna go with many, but I'll go with RFK, Robert Kennedy Jr., who's who talked about that the virus was aimed at, and certain groups were spared this virus, the Jews, the Ashkenazi Jews, and the Chinese. And then he appeared before the committee the other day, and they're quoting all these crazy things he's saying, and he's like, what are you talking about? Where did you get that from? And they're like, you said it, dude. The guy is insane. He's just not stable, and he's got the Kennedy name, and he's just grinding it into the ground.
Destroyed it. Yeah.
The classic thing to me was, how did RFK Jr. know the difference between the Ashkenazis and the Sephardim? It's beyond me, but he identified us specifically, the Poles, the Russians, the Germans, not the Germans.
Well, what was it? Camelot ended thanks to Arthur's illegitimate son, Mordred. I guess Camelot ended here with the grandson, or I should say, the great nephew of JFK. So there you go with that. Well, okay. I'm really surprised that nobody listed Marjorie Taylor Greene as the schmuckette of the week, especially given the fact that she quite actually could be in violation of a DC ordinance for displaying revenge porn, as she did in
I
the.
tried to black it out of my mind.
Oh my God! Right.
Yeah, but I'm gonna take a page out of Fish's sports almanac here. My schmuck of the week is former Cincinnati Reds Hall of Fame catcher Johnny Bench, who at a ceremony or an event to honor former Reds GM Gabe Paul, is sitting there while, of course, that bastion of integrity, Pete Rose, was recounting a story about how he signed to a deal worth $400 a month on his first contract. Janice Paul, who was Gabe Paul's daughter, who was there, said, "Wow, that's cheap." To which Johnny Bench said, "Well, he was Jewish." So
the legends live on.
The legends live on from the Chippewa on down.
Gimme. The next thing you know, they were burying their dead standing up so that money doesn't fall out of the pockets. There's all kinds of ones we can tell you about that we've heard.
Well, I don't know how many times the church bell's going to chime for Mr. Bench. It's got to be fewer than 29, but more than 5, which was his jersey number. He has apologized for it. He says that I recognize my comment was insensitive. I apologize to Jenny for taking away from her father the full attention he deserves. Actually, I think he added a little bit too much to the narrative. Gabe Paul earned his place in the Reds Hall of Fame, same as the others who stood on that stage. I'm sorry that some of the focus is on my inappropriate remark instead of solely on Gabe's achievement.
He's so sorry they heard him say it.
The life out of a nickel.
Yeah. I feel dirty now because back in the day, one of the first things I bought when I got to the United States was Johnny Bench Batter Up, because my dad said, you're going to need to learn how to play an American sport. So it was
Johnny Bench growing up. I mean, come on. I love that Reds team. Foster.
The Big Red Machine, Foster, Geronimo, Griffey, what was it? Rose Morgan, Concepcion, Perez. Yeah. I actually wanted the Red Sox to win the 75 World Series, but what did I know? I was a new arrival. So, and you know how us immigrants are. So anyway, well, listen, thank you for another wonderful roundabout when it comes to this week that was with the news. Thank you, Steve Fishman. Thank you, Joel Sklar. Thank you, Barb Ingalls. Thank you, Anthony Bryant, being in Florida. Hope you get out okay. If you need any help, we'll come and rescue you along with the Israeli national treasure items. And thank you, Allan Lengel, with the last word.
Drive home safely.
Take care, everybody. Have a great week.